We took a week off, but we are back, and we're going to be talking about IEM Cologne 2024. We got to see what I think is going to be an iconic final, so it made sense that I had to have two icons here to chat with us. Also, more importantly for me, I just figured this is the only time we probably all get to like work together, quote unquote. So Richard and Thorin.
All right.
It is.
Not necessarily. I'm back in the game. I need
He could be an analyst, technically. Yeah. They just always forget he does that. And also, I actually know you are a fangirl of CS, so for you, this is a dream. This is like a by-the-numbers sandwich.
This is actually pretty cool. We were talking about this, though, in Cologne.
Metaphorically, you know.
Yeah, I know. I just realized there's a...
Saved it there at the end. Well done, mate.
The fangirl in me was thinking about something else, and then halfway through, I was like, oh, wait, I just got Thorin's joke. So there we go.
Okay. It's all good.
That's fine.
Let's jump straight into... Yeah, great start. It's going to get worse from here, but everyone will enjoy it. Let's talk about that final right off the bat, because for me, as the fangirl, I thought Vitality versus NAVI in the grand finals, IEM Cologne 2024. What a freaking game that was. Like, if you're a Counter-Strike fan and you watch that, you had to be happy, Thorin. You had to just enjoy every moment, because it was, I would say, the pinnacle of our game right there.
No, I thought it was mega. Like, the first three maps, genuinely, if I'm both teams, I thought I should have won 3-0. Like, it's like, as soon as we entered that Mirage, it was like you were in that territory where it's like, no matter who loses, this is one of those finals you just think about forever, and your head goes back to it. And then ESL in a year brings out one of those mini movies about the Mirage again, and all the back and forth, and the you know, the outside of the server stuff, and the player cams, and all that. It was iconic. If you think about it, CS2, the biggest problem is it hasn't had that many classic series so far, but that's probably the best one we've had. And also, I am someone who forever was going on and on about best of 5 finals. And all I'll say is, you might not like the bad ones when they're 3-0, but when they go like that and they're good, nothing can touch them. Like, if that had really ended after 3, it wouldn't have worked. You had to see that fourth one. You had to know if it could go on, if it could have extended further.
Yeah, I mean, has it changed your mind about MR12, though?
The problem is, I've never been totally against it. Like, I actually think it makes the game faster, which is not a problem. My issue is just that I do think it makes the, more luck in terms of who wins, because, like, the pistols are so important again. Now, like, a force buy ruins the whole game. Like, it's actually a little bit better now. They just changed the economy a little bit with that update. That's not bad. My problem was always just that, like, I think it was... I can't remember if it was Nero. One of those HLTV guys ran the numbers, and it actually turned out that the biggest thing that had actually changed games to be longer wasn't anything to do with economy or like max rounds. It was actually something like when they made the bomb timer longer. I think it was when they put 10 seconds on the bomb time. But the problem is we didn't actually find that. No one ran the numbers until after they'd already done the update, basically, and we'd already gone to MR12. So I said, if we could essentially have had some like middle ground there, maybe that would have worked too. But I don't know. Also, there was too much saving in CSGO, so maybe it was the meta too. I don't mind it necessarily, but I just do think this is why I wanted the best of 5. I do think in a best of 3, I have seen some games where it's like, wow, that's over too quick. You know what I mean? It can go the other way too.
Oh, I mean, we've definitely got you know, snowballs back now, and you know, we went through a long time in MR15 where the game's just, it was all the rounds all the time. It would come down to one mistake right at the end or one mistake in overtime, super drawn out, especially with all the timeouts. And that's why I was sick at MR15. And that's why in good conscience, I couldn't come along for best of 5s in that environment. You know, the last year of CSGO, I thought the game was excruciating to watch, honestly. I didn't even think it was particularly fun. And so a best of 5, while I agree with your arguments about, oh, it's deep water, it's like the UFC, the championship rounds, all of that stuff, I think the fundamental problem was when you have a final that's like 7 or 8 hours long, and it just comes down to this like mental attrition, and it's not fun to watch for the fans either. I didn't see who was winning in that environment. This, however, with MR12, I think, yeah, let's have best of 5s. I wouldn't even be against making it the standard for something like the majors, because a 3-0 blowout is bad, but a you know, like when you get like a back and forth like this, it's really, really good. And with MR12, it's almost like the juice is worth the squeeze potentially, because you aren't going to have one of those 7-8 hour, you know, yawn fests. You are going to have like, you know, really exciting back and forth, you know, the resets with the overtime. I mean, look, the only thing I would say is I think we can get rid of pistol rounds now.
How do it take that? By the way, that would even be the compromise. Henry's old idea is a good one, because if the problem I have with going from MR15 to 12 is the rounds you basically remove are the gun rounds. Like essentially the pistol's still the exact same. So if you want to take the pistol away, a bit like a thing in the NFL where they've done that thing with the kickoff, just take it away. Let's just have the game be gun rounds, and then when you broke, you save. I'd be in favour of that. The problem then is you just get all the traditionalists like, yeah, but that's not CS. It's like, to be fair, we did kick dust too out the pool, guys. We've done plenty of things that were against tradition. I'm with you.
Yeah, what do you think, Sam?
For me, I thought if we go back to the MR15, MR12 thing, I thought that this particular best of 5 would have been super disappointing if it had been an MR15, just because I think it would have gone on forever and ever and ever. It was super punchy. It was super quick. If it had been a best of 3, I think it would have been devastating to watch, if I'm honest, because I just think it would have ended too soon. So I, for one, I like MR12. Like, I think it was a good change, but I do agree. Like, if you got rid of the gun rounds, it would probably be better. And I do think, as much as we say this, at some point there's going to be a best of 5 and it's going to be a 3-0 stomp. And then we might re-examine that. That's going to come. But when you have 2 of the best teams currently on a stage fighting it out, like that Mirage, to me, when that map finished, I was shattered. Like, I was exhausted just watching it. But it was so insane. And I think, what it was, like 3 overtimes, right? Like, it was just crazy to watch. And every time you thought you knew which way it was going, it went the other way. And it was by the end of that map, I literally just sat there. I was like, I don't actually give a shit who wins now. Like, I'll be super happy because I've just had a really good time watching. So I think that's important for fans. And I'm kind of with you, Richard. Towards the end of CSGO, I don't think a lot of Counter-Strike fans were feeling that way. Like, I know I would a lot of the time be watching a final, get up, go do something else, come back. Maybe I'd like miss a map because I wanted to like go do something else. Whereas now I was actually invested. So I feel like this was a really good example of what the game could be at the highest level. Whether or not it's always going to be like this, though, is obviously the big question, right? Because it depends who's in the final. I do think majors should be best of 5, though. After seeing this, I think a grand final and a major should be best of 5.
Yeah, I think I think one thing Valve should focus on. I know this is taking us out of the minutiae of the game, which I'll give some thoughts on that in a moment. But I think Valve should be looking at the standardization of the tournament circuit. They're bringing in all these additional rules to get us away from the partnered and franchise league system, and they're saying if your tournament wants to be an S-tier tournament, it has to conform to these rules. It has to invite these teams from this ranking. Okay, so while I'm all for experimentation, we should probably have some sort of standardized format for all of the major, the big tournaments and the majors, which are the world championships in and of themselves. And if we are going to have prominent events like Colognes and Katowice's on the calendar with best of 5s, Valve could, they could do worse than say, like, just adopt that to bring it in to the fold. And so every time you're watching a big tournament, there's a best of 5 final at the end, because it's a bit of a damp squib if you have a Cologne and a Katowice or whatever else. We get to the World Championships, the end of the season, it's a best of 3. It's anticlimactic at that juncture. And I will say, particularly where we're at right now, where we haven't had an era in so long, a best of 5 is a tantalizing prospect, because you feel whichever 2 teams make it to a final in any given moment, they're going to be competitive with each other, relative to that moment in time. I don't think, as things stand at the moment, I think chances of a 3-0 blowout stomp final, I think they're pretty slim, actually. I don't think there's a particularly high chance of that. So, yeah, I mean, I think the one thing I'll take from this final, other than it being like really fantastic game to watch, one of the best series of the year, is that it kind of has shown us a tantalizing glimpse of what we could have regularly across the rest of the season, should Valve stay true to the guns and MR12 hold up.
For sure. But let's get back to the game, though.
Yeah.
What did you I mean, Richard, actually, I want to take you back to the major. I'm going to throw my friend Pimp under the bus.
Yeah, when you said he wouldn't be in top 5. Yeah, I was going to say. I was going to do it if you didn't. So,
I look at NAVI now, and I mean, he has, I think, publicly said he was incorrect. I feel like this team needs a lot more credit for what they've done. I know they lost, but hell, the show that they put on, and it's 2 trophies this year, 4 grand finals. They went toe-to-toe with Vitality. Like, there is a lot of people who need to eat their words. Pimp, most importantly, right?
Well, no, I actually think in that moment, this is the weird thing about like context and what about today, dickhead magic and all of that stuff, is that in that moment in time, I think Pimp was actually correct in saying I don't think by the time the next major comes rolling around, Navi are going to be a top 5 team. I think that was definitely the smart way to look at the lay of the land, and that was the correct assessment in that moment in time. Now, it hasn't gone on to be correct, and so yeah, he's wrong, right? Technically wrong. But if you look at some of the additional things that have had to go the way of Navi to get us to a point where Navi is like, can go on and be that number 1 team. Well, we've had all the internal turmoil and problems with G2. We've got MOUZ when they were number 1, the ultimate paper tiger world number 1. They were never gonna. They're still yet to show that they can do it in a stadium when the pressure's on, when it absolutely matters. The drop off of FaZe has also coincided, where they were in every final, and now they're struggling. Virtus Pro are inexplicably bad. Astralis spent 2 million on making a Danish super team, and they're no further forward than they were in the Blame F era. And this is what I mean. Like people only look at a team's dominance in and of itself, and they go, okay, well, they've beat all these teams and they're number 1 in the world, and so they must be the best, and that's all that matters. And it's like, okay, yeah, but sometimes these scenes that we have, some are stronger than others, and to dominate is harder in other time periods than it is in others. And I think with Navi, I think look, it's a fantastic achievement being a world number 1. They've definitely had a ton of stuff that they've had to overcome. I quite like this team, and I like the constituent parts and the attitudes, and I felt a bit sorry for Wonderful in particular in this series, because I think he is the person who's living in simple shadow the most out of anyone on this roster. I'm rooting for them, but equally, I don't think we can ignore that G2 had all of those issues. Like, they should probably be having deeper runs. Vitality kind of just fell off until now. Spirit having some problems. We're starting to find out that Donk is mortal, the FaZe stuff. So it's like, if any of those teams maintain their course, where would Navi be? We don't really know. We can't really say. So I still think this top 10 currently, I don't think it's great. I don't think it's strong. I think it's better than the end of CSGO. But I think a lot of teams are yet to find their feet. And I think, Navi have probably been the biggest beneficiaries of that these last few months. It'll be interesting to see what happens at the major, I think.
By the way, the other reason why Pimp wasn't wrong is all of his analysis was correct at the time. Like, I always keep saying this. It's one of the only times ever where, if you want to talk about, is it a fluke? Like, mathematically, it is the greatest outlier in the history of CS majors. There are 2 facts which are irrefutable. One, they had 2 players have a 0.8 rating and won the major. That has never happened in history. And then secondly, they managed to lose more rounds than they won at the major and win the fucking major. That just doesn't happen in Counter-Strike. So actually, mathematics say it was the biggest fluke ever. And the difference is that Navi that played then would have won none of these tournaments. I actually think, unironically, they are 1.5 to 2 times better than when they won the major. But again, what an outlier. What team could you ever say that about? If you are a fluke, you don't get better. And if you win the major, that's normally your zenith. So I think a lot of credit also has to go to people like Blade. He's actually one of the only coaches I've ever seen. Remember, Richard, it used to be that thing on By the Numbers when he used to say, give me 6 months when Navi wasn't on top. Well, the thing is, he's done it twice now with 2 rosters. He actually is the only one who isn't talking out of his arse and just saving his job when he says, give me 6 months. Because normally, in 3 months if they're any good. With a Blade team, I actually think he does seem to just gradually integrate piece by piece by piece, and then they peak. And if they're peaking now, they're way better than they were at the major, I think.
Well, it's another reason why I made the point at the time. Back when they had that lineup and they were losing to Gambit all the time, and he was stubbornly sticking to his guns. That's why I was criticizing him all the time. Because
it's totally valid.
Yeah, that team should have been winning way more trophies and shouldn't have been getting handled by Gambit back in the online era. What I will say is, I think, we're talking about people that maybe are benefiting from Simple not being there. Well, I mean, I hate to say it, but I think Blade might be the biggest benefit.
Yeah.
I think it's very hard as a coach to kind of put a game plan and keep moods elevated and keep channels of communication open, make sure everybody is going out and doing what they need to do when you have a potentially disruptive element. And I mean, best will in the world, Simple was that guy. Simple, you used to see it in his body language. You could hear it in the comms. You could see it in the way he would turn to players and chew them up in the middle of a match. Like, it's very hard to counteract that as a coach. And so I think Blade has certainly benefited from not having that, kind of toxic component there. And obviously, I think in Alexi B, I think he has a pretty good foil, because even though, like, Blade has certainly said some things that are less than complimentary about Alexi B, Alexi B hasn't let it get to him.
Alexi,
and
he's never fired back. He just takes it.
Yeah, exactly. And, sometimes, honestly, I think that's how a coach in an IGL relationship should be.
Yeah.
I think it should flow that way. So I think Blade absolutely deserves a lot of credit for this, because it's an international lineup, a lot of question marks about it, a lot of unproven players in this lineup.
Yep.
Imma, JL, wonderful. I mean, this was Imma's first big move after Gamer Legion. Lots of question marks about JL, what he was going to do. Wonderful, obviously, was a talent, was a prospect. People talked about him, but he wouldn't have necessarily been the heir apparent that that it looks like he could go on to be. So yeah, I mean, obviously Blade definitely needs to take a lot of credit for what he's done with this lineup. It's an unbelievable achievement.
I love this lineup. I kind of find myself wanting to root for them all the time, just because, like you mentioned, it is all these unproven players. But also, I kind of dig the fact that there isn't a Simple or a Manasi or a Zaru or a Donk, that we're talking about the superstar. It's like all these unassuming players that, I mean, we obviously rate them. We know they're good, but no one's going, wow, that's like the superstar coming together and consistently kind of doing what people think that they can't do. Plus, they do have a really nice attitude. It clearly comes across in their interviews and the way they behave, which I really like. But we'll get back to the final and talking about Vitality and NAVI. I kind of want to pick up something Richard mentioned, because I do think this was just the biggest fall off we've seen. I don't even know how to begin describing what the hell happened to Spirit coming into this. It wasn't even it wasn't even like they had a rough tournament. They didn't even start the tournament. It's like they never even activated. For you, gents, I mean, what the hell do you think happened there?
You first, Duncan.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, one of the big problems with this team, it's actually why I was one of the few people. Everyone would think, since Spirit that won Katowice was probably the craziest, rookie roster to ever win. A brand new 5-man lineup just walks into a prestige event, basically their first actual event. Remember, at Blast Groups, they had visa issues. They walk in and they just win Katowice, and they don't even just win it. They only lost one map, and that was a 16-14 or something when Navi won one Miracle Anubis off them. So the way they won, everyone did do that thing where they lost their minds, and they were like, they're going to be the greatest team of all time. They're going to win every event. No one can ever stop Dog. So I was actually the guy trying to be well, temper it down a bit. We've never seen, look, maybe they are going to rewrite every rule of Counter-Strike, but when you watch it for 20 years, that's unlikely. And what normally happens is you regression to the mean. You can have a hard tournament eventually. Turn out they actually lost at the RMR afterwards. You didn't win the major. But the problem I have is this: the whole time throughout the whole year, pretty much, you could always rely on one out of Donk or Shiro to turn up. They were actually two of the most reliable players. Donk's just mega, and Shiro just has probably the ultimate safe AWPing style. His flaw to his game is very, very good. First of all, in these series, both of them were absolutely terrible in a way that was actually inexplicable. Yeah. And what you saw when that happened, that's why I was saying don't overrate the team, is these two do a lot of the heavy lifting in this squad. It's just that they're so perfectly fit to their positions. They can do it normally. So when you take that away, it's why actually, if you ever saw those rounds against G2, the people who got made to look like fools were Chopper and Magix. Because since nothing was happening, they were getting no frags, they just started trying to make hero players, but with the sort of trash SMGs that they have, and they were trying to peek into the G2 firepower, and they were just getting chewed up. So what's funny is I'm sure a fan would look at them and go, they're fucking morons. But it's like the arse had fallen out of the team. There was no engine to the team at that point in time. And you could see when they first came on the scene, they very much were playing around like Donk's style and strength. Like everything was for him. The fucking flashes were for him. The follow-up Shiro was even like re-peeking in, so that if he got killed, he traded him immediately. Like they had so many things built in for Donk. And so when that wasn't there, I actually felt like they were a team where it's almost like your two strikers are injured. Like, how are you going to win? You can have the best build-up play in the world. You can have the best defensive midfield. Someone's got to hit a goal in the football to win you the match. And that immediately went away. There's also the other aspect, which is, I mean, part of this, people always reference that Zontic's interview before the match.
Yeah.
If you look at his face and you consider that he's the only Ukrainian player in that team, and I've heard he got a lot of stick for being in a Russian team, by the way, he is someone where, I don't know if it's him or someone else, but it was inferred behind the scenes in the rumour mill of the CIS region, which now obviously bleeds into English because you have those people translating it. It's inferred maybe they're thinking of a roster move.
Yep.
So maybe that's one of those ones where, sadly, you've heard the rumour yourself, even though they haven't told you, and you know you're already out. Because I'll tell you what, as much as we all have known those amazing rosters that they're dead, but then they go, no pressure, and they win the tournament, there's also the ones you don't know that they're dead already, and they just go straight last place. Because everyone turns up and they just sort of go, right, start the game. Oh, we lost it. Well, see you guys. See you at the boot camp. And you know you're not even going to be there. So something felt wrong, like, funnily enough, spiritually with this team. Not even just in the server. I can do the analysis there. But something was mad off about the vibe in that squad.
Yeah, definitely. I picked up on that. There are some, stupid rumors circulating. I don't know whether there's any credence in it, but it's Perfecto is the name.
It's the obvious one, yeah.
Yeah, so, and obviously you could tell some of him was off with Zonix. He wasn't happy. He heard the interview himself. It was one of those things where it's like, yeah, maybe people are reading too much into it. Maybe he was just oversharing, because it was like rough day at the office or whatever. But very, very bizarre, like how poor they played. And honestly, the reaction to their underperformance was kind of like, I don't know, I don't want to say distasteful because I don't really care about that.
Everyone was sort of saying they're dead as a team and they have to disband or something mental, aren't they? Like, what?
It's like, this is the first time they've really done unbelievably poorly.
Yes.
And keep in mind, they also kind of got a little bit unlucky because they shouldn't have been playing G2 for tournament
of course
life,
not.
right?
Yeah.
And G2, as I said, I think they win a tournament this year out of the ones that are left. I think they've got one in them with this lineup. I mean, the MOUZ, debate about, oh, he's going to play so poorly because he doesn't get his roles. Well, how's that worked out? And I think people are being overly harsh on Snacks. Like, give him time. He's still not Hooksy. There's still massive pluses. So, the reaction was, I mean, like, people were unironically posting on Reddit, and it's like, I get a little bit of fun, like what the HLTV writers were doing, like, yeah, Donk is washed. Look at his stats. It's his career worst map and this kind of thing. But there were people saying, he was a flash in the pan, that Donk.
Oh, fucking hell.
Yeah, there was like, some of the discourse was so ass about him. And it's like, star players don't do it all the time. We don't put it on.
And he's a fucking rookie.
Yeah,
exactly. He hasn't
exactly.
played a year.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, like, we don't even know, he had that incredible explosive, like, arrival on the scene, but we don't know how long he's going to be able to sustain that for. And it's not reasonable to assume he would. I mean, it's very rare. You haven't seen anything like that since Ziwu. And let's be real, he had his dips as well, quite famously.
This year even, yeah.
Yes. So it was really ass the way people were talking about it. Now, yeah, I don't know what Spirit are gonna do, whether or not that roster move is a real thing and it is gonna happen. It does kind of feel, unfortunately, if you're Ukrainian and you're playing on a mixed Russian team right now, it's not viable. The community aren't gonna let you do it. There are elements within the Ukrainian Counter-Strike community that do consider it a betrayal. They're contacting government. They're contacting, trying to stop
Because remember that story where when Monacy broke out with G2, just because Bit was his friend, people were attacking Bit and saying he had to like denounce him. And they weren't even in the same team. They weren't even implied they would ever play together. Like, I don't think, because obviously
came through NAVI Academy together as well.
Sure.
You know,
no, but that's what I mean. Like, we've never tried to blow these stories up, but they've always been simmering under the surface. I don't always know that the Western crowd thinks about it or even remembers that connection to the real life situation, which is always somewhat informing this situation to me.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is there does seem to be a trend of segregation now. And I'm sure people have noticed it if you just think about it. And it's sad. It's it's sad, but it's sad but understandable, all things considered. And there might be some legs to that story. Just in terms of performance on the server, totally unrecognizable. The Mongols game was when I knew, like, oh, okay. It's not just because they lost. It was like some of the rounds they lost were like horrendous, like really, really bad. People were like, it's not that the Mongols aren't talented or whatever, but I mean, like, they got dominated, and there were some clutches in there which were just like elementary, mistakes that you wouldn't expect. Like Spirit weren't making these mistakes like 3 months back, So I don't know. Real big shock, and whether or not it's like just a one-off, an aberration, we'll see. But there definitely felt to be something corrosive in the team based on their body language, the media work they did, and honestly, quite a quiet slink away at the end. They there wasn't like, oh, sorry fans or anything like that. Yeah. It's like, let's just get the fuck out of the building.
That was exactly what it is. And I was going to say, do you think the roster change is coming? But you obviously both brought it up, because I do think that's probably the route that's going to go. To me, it just felt like from the moment they walked in, just their body language, they were a dead team walking. It's almost like they knew nothing was coming of this, and they hadn't even, their hearts weren't in it. But we'll have to wait and see. But onto the more positive
I hope
things.
There isn't, by the way. I have to say, unless there was some sort like this, unless this is based on like, some like emotional outburst from someone and they can't work with someone. If it's just that they just had a bad tournament, I would double down on this team immediately. I actually had this team even like just before the play break as my team to win the next major. I still think if they just come back and they play the CS they played before, they're one of the hardest teams in the whole world to beat. There was only something like, I think 5 teams had beaten them in the whole year. And those were basically all the best teams, except now Mongols get to join that group inexplicably in the obvious outlier. So I think that team was one of the teams with the highest floor of any team. So I would run that back. I would at least wait, brace with it. And like I say, unless there's some massive attitude issue outside of the server, I'd at least wait till the end of the next season. You give them till after the next major, whole year to blood. Zontix and Donk were total rookies to tier 1. Then I wonder if I have to upgrade, because even this Perfecto move, I love Perfecto. I think his role, he was one of the best to ever do it. But right now, it all worked in Spirit until this event. You were a really tight-knit group.
Yeah. I mean, look, if you look at the next 2 events they've got Bet Boom, Dakar, and ESL Pro League. And it's like, you've got 2 ways of looking at it. If you are going to make a roster move, those are 2 great tournaments to bet in a new player. They're low stakes. The ESL Pro League is long, lots of games.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen Navi do that in the past, right? When they want to make tactical changes, they used to use Pro League to do it. So, for that reason. So, I mean, if you are going to do it now, because you've still got plenty of time ahead of the major to set things right. But I agree. Unless this is some sort of irreparable breakdown in personal relationships, then there's no reason to change, even based on a tournament as catastrophic as this one.
I wonder if the rumors of the change happened before the tournament, which then caused the breakdown. That's kind of where my head's leaning to.
Yeah,
there are a bunch of youngsters,
doesn't it? As well, you hear on the rumor mill. I mean, it doesn't help as well that the
a lot of fake fucking rumors in there scene too. That can't be good. You know what I mean?
There's so many bullshit artists, like with Twitter accounts and fucking Telegram accounts, just spreading garbage. It's like one of the hardest ones, to kind of like deal with all of that stuff. So.
Well, moving on to more fun things, I suppose, because you brought him up, and this one for me was one of my funniest moments of Cologne. So I'm gonna sort of tell you that story and then see if you had any of these moments. But it was specifically when MOUZ, when G2 beat Astralis, and he does the interview afterwards. I'm feeding all the gossip in the Reddit, but the first thing he says is, "I did it for Swisher," and it went over a lot of people's heads. But obviously, if you are watching, you don't know what's happening. Starvin, who's now in Astralis, there was an alleged situation where MOUZ's old teammate, Swisher, he arrived at an event with his girlfriend, and his girlfriend ended up in the bed of Starvin, allegedly. So MOUZ stood up and said, I did this for Swisher. I laughed so hard when it happened, especially because I realized a lot of people hadn't got it. But for me, watching this I want to call him a rookie, but this young player who everyone kind of felt wasn't going to do well, said was going to get bullied by G2, and he also is quite an unassuming kid when you see him.
He is.
He does look quite
it's quite soft spoken, everything.
Yeah, he stands up and just makes this like really banger comment.
Sure.
I'm a huge fan of him now.
Well, in that moment, he showed he was. You know, he actually should just be given the citizen. He's just an NA player. He's actually graduated. I thought he was just some cool guy from Guatemala, you know, chilling, keep his head down. I will say though, I've got a kind of a controversial take on that. I wasn't as in on that take, and here's why. I'll give you a very quick tangent. Back in the day when Joe Rogan used to just be a famous comedian and MMA was just gradually rising, he used to have to go and do all these interviews to explain why isn't this human cockfighting and why is it, why is it better than boxing? And and one of the arguments he gave was a great one. He just said fighting is inherent to mankind, actually, to men specifically. And that since it's basically the only thread that's been in all of time, he said the way you know fighting is the ultimate sport to watch is because he said, when you're playing basketball and you go around a guy and you slam it in his head on the top and then you go, yeah, bitch, take that. What you really want to do there is punch him in his face, right? He goes, that's what you're sort of doing when you slam the ball in his head. You're sort of saying, I dominated you. And so he said, here's how you know fighting's the ultimate sport. Because if you did that to me, and then I did just punch you in the face a bunch, you couldn't go, well, you kicked my ass, but remember when I slammed that basketball on you? It doesn't work. You know what? Immediately the stick. So you can see where I'm going here. My only problem is it was great banter, but it doesn't work as revenge. If the revenge goes like this, oh yeah, Stone, you may have fucked my friend's girl, but did you see me just beat you in that video game? All I'm going to say is I think Star wins that one. Listen, I give you a consolation. You came hard at the end. It was good for MOUZ. I don't think that was really any sort of revenge for fucking Swiffer. You know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, his relationship's still ruined. So I don't really know that were two maps against. You know what I mean? I
liked it more for the banter. I just thought it was like a really funny comment off the top of your head, and it made me feel like there's a little bit of cockiness in this kid. That's going to be impressive. That for me was like my funniest moments, or the moment that I enjoyed the most. But I'm wondering if either of you, I mean, Richard, did you have a moment during Cologne now where you were just like, yeah, this is why we love this game? Did any of those moments hit you?
Look, I'll just say in general, just the contrast between our scene and then trash like League of Legends and Valorant and how like pathetic it is.
I mean, right now with League, they're doing that thing where they're editing all the emotes so they can't trigger you. It's like, you put a hook that could bait you, put a fish on it. Meanwhile, Brokey's like, and everyone in the scene's just like, yes, salute, amazing shit. Like, no, you'd be banned for life.
Yeah, and I think it's always a good contrast because we do let the players breathe. We do have there's some swearing on a broadcast, not excessive. But if it happens, it happens. The interviewer's not going to pull the microphone away and go, right, none of that. I apologize for everyone at home. It's like, for fuck's sake, it's a game about terrorism, right?
Yeah, we shoot each other in the head
using literal real terrorist groups in it. We won't even get to who owns and funds the game now, but we've got
on the nose.
We've got military sponsors.
I know.
And it's aimed at 18-year-olds. So it's like I never liked this idea that we had to be like all sanitary and like professional. And also, by the way, like Duncan says, having followed combat sports all my life, I mean, the average press conference there.
Oh,
It's,
no,
it's the pre-fight.
Yeah.
It's the undercard these days.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you expect fists to fly. It's
Bro,
not exactly
someone cried at the last one. They made him break down crying.
Yeah,
And by the way, everyone was loving it. They were like, no.
Yeah,
Everyone was like, in
exactly.
League of Legends, they'd be like, but what about his mental health? I think he needs some time off and to see a therapist. Like, everyone was like, fuck him. If he dies, he dies.
Yeah, exactly. we get on the Rocky shit, you know. So, it's like it's always good to see like where CS kind of is and how we've never succumbed to that low to be like, unless it's CadiaN, of course, and in which case everyone clutches their pearls. Or whatever, you know, because the average fan is a
he opens his mouth.
I know, it's ridiculous.
Well, here's the thing. That alone says it because it wasn't even at this tournament. But put it this way: the line CadiaN said to you would unironically have he'd never work a broadcast event again in a Riot Games one. The one about his balls, he would never work an event ever again. That would be treated like some sort of like misogyny or something crazy. Whereas obviously he was just bringing you into like some banter, wasn't he?
You say that.
Well, I thought you brought up the word balls first, didn't you?
Yeah, I told him he didn't have very big balls. Well, Scrawny started it. Scrawny said that he needed to grow some balls and make a prediction. And I proceeded to go with you have tiny balls. And then it just became that whole thing. But interestingly, after
problem was he wasn't going to lose to a girl again, was he? This time he has to get his dignity back. Whatever, old school reference for the fans there.
Oh, I love that. But ironically, after he said that, there were some people who did take great offense on my behalf and said I was being like, and then they didn't use the word sexually assaulted, but basically that like I was being like victimized by him when he did that. And the whole time I was laughing because I brought it up, and I was like, "How did you not see that I started this shit?"
Sure.
Like, so that was actually quite funny. But yeah, anything CadiaN says is obviously very offensive. I don't know how he would cope in like a Valorant situation because the fans believe he is like the devil reincarnated.
It's basically me as a player.
Yeah, it's actually ridiculous. It's like, you know, what I love as well is the way the stories with CadiaN always get exaggerated. Like, it's going to be that he made a joke about, like, we know he just made a joke about his balls. That was following a long thread of jokes about balls being made on the desk. But in 3 months, Redditors will be posting. Do you remember when CadiaN got his balls out at a blast? And he got them out, and it was like Andrew Tate's face on his testicles. And like,
you mean like the one where they famously, the people who weren't there always going, you remember when Thorin went to Katowice? He went on the desk and he just started going off on post it. Man, that would be mental, wouldn't it? Imagine if I didn't know what you're talking about, you daft. It was a StarCraft 2 podcast.
Karma, just quickly, can you put me out to the crowd?
I know, exactly.
Listen,
I've got a few things to tell you.
Fucking stinks. Like it's a wrestling promo, you know what I mean?
But I'm like fucking like Hollywood Hogan or something.
Yeah, absolutely ridiculous. No way. Yeah, I know, but like, so,
look out for that. Look out for that narrative coming soon.
Well, just on the Swisher point as well, and the Swisher and MOUZ thing. Everyone's gonna go, Richard, wow, you're such a contrarian.
Oh, come on.
But I don't have any issue with it. Like, fair enough, MOUZ. You know, like he was tight with all of the M80 guys, and everybody knows in the scene about what happened there. I mean, by the way,
they do now. By the way, just said it on the fucking prestige event.
No, but I mean, I it's not what I would have done. This wouldn't have been my approach. But Swisher did tell everyone about it. I mean,
sure.
You know, so I mean, no secrets there. And I'll just say this. I think Stown, you know, he went through a fair bit.
Yeah, people forget that.
Yeah, you know, and
his brother died a year and a half ago, guys.
Yeah,
you know, just saying.
You know, you're probably not making the best choices in life, or you're trying to deal with that. You had all of the stress of being in the team and getting to Astralis and all of this stuff. And you know, it's like, look, I get the banter, but I also think probably Stown is a little bit shook at being kind of universally disliked. It's kind of harsh. He's just some kid. He's just an unassuming kid. Yeah. He's not a bad guy, by the way.
No.
You know. So it's that one. By bringing that up, I get why you did it, because obviously, if you're a friend of somebody that happened to, you ain't gonna let that slide. But also, I'm let's not get into, you know, wives and girlfriends.
Yeah, there's a line. Come on. Stuff. I actually do think, by the way, put it this way, spoiler, this is where I actually know JL sort of gets that it's banter. Because first of all, he likes all the fucking tweets I do that say he's an idiot. So that might just be he's an idiot, but I think it means it implies he enjoys the back and forth, right? And you'll notice he's never actually crossed the line. He's never tried to say something ridiculously personal about me on my... Because here's the thing, if he does, don't worry, I've got the nukes in the sidewalk. I've already had all that. People gave me all the info, I've got the videos, got the thing. But we don't ever have to go there. As long as you stay the other side of the Rubicon, homie, It's just Rome, isn't it? I tell you what, if you ever cross it though, that'll be the fucking end.
I truly believe that the two of you and JL are talking every day. You guys are doing this for the engagement. You're building up. There's going to be.
Oh, by the way, I will say that, Sam. It does feel sometimes with some of the boring players, like, do I have to carry the fucking narratives while I'm not at home? I have to have a beef with a player to make some interesting back and forth. Like, can't you guys in the game do it instead of just shaking hands or whatever, you know? But whatever, I'll do it for now. I'm a heel in that sense.
What sparked off the thing with you and JL, by the way?
Oh, I can tell you what happened was, I can't remember what major this even was. It might even have been Blast Paris or something. He just had one day did one of those like Loba/Smooya type ones where out of nowhere they just tweet and tag you and just go like, every time this clown tweets. And it's like, I don't even know you, mate. I've never heard of you. You're just some Easter Island head motherfucker that used to be all right in Apex. Like, what? Okay. And then what I did was I didn't reply back then, Richard, because that's when one of my new things I put in my protocols is my mistake I realized was if you're Jay-Z, you don't just beef with a random guy who has a mixtape. You got to have someone it can be worth it for you. It's got to be like 50 Cent or fucking some actual famous rappers. So you can have a legendary back and forth. So what I said at the time was, sadly, this didn't age well, so I had to beef with him. And I said at the time to all my people, you know what? He's just some nobody on a team that made one run ever. He's like, from now on, you have to be like legend status or top player, and then I'll be for you. And then obviously Navi became really good and won the major. I was like, well, shit, like, you know what? Fuck it, bombs away then, right? Usual run of things. You got a big head, you're stupid, you know, all the classics, you know, bringing out all the top material.
Yeah, no, I think because yeah.
And by the way, there's actually no ill will to him as an actual player. I actually think as a player, he's pretty good. So I can separate that. Don't worry about that.
I liked for me the thing I like about him is he seems to understand the concept of being like I mean, maybe he doesn't really understand it, but I mean, he's doing it whether he knows he's doing it or not. But like being a talisman for your team, like being you know.
Oh yeah, he's the big impact player. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like I thought, you know, because I was up above the stage at the major in Copenhagen when they won it. And, you know, just what I was watching, you know, his reactions and everything, you know, all throughout that series. And it was like, you know, having guys like that, it really helps. People used to mock CadiaN for doing it because, of course, they do. But, you know, GL does that. He fills that role within NAVI. And, like, you know, it seems to be like, yeah, a down-to-earth guy you might be putting it next. Like, we're not going to have a conversation about the finer points of, you know, Dickensian literature anytime, but that's, fuck it. All he's got.
But he's watched Harry Potter the movie, so there's always something in common, you know?
Yeah, love it. I actually haven't. I never have.
Okay.
So maybe you could tell me all about it next time I see him. It'll be great. But yeah, anyway, I thought it was such a strange beef because, like you say, it's like I get it when you beef with Fallen, I get it when you beef with Simple. I just didn't know what this guy had done other than win a major. Like I was like,
well, there we go.
And by the way, as usual,
like, what's going on here? Like,
he does usually start at each time. What happens is he just wakes up and decides to do it. He usually even tags me or replies to me. So you know.
Well, we all know how this story ends as well, because in 2 years he's recording reflections with you.
Of course. They all do in the end. They all do in the end. In fact, in some ways, it's probably one of those fucking, like, get a room, you two, and then eventually, like, we'll do the reflections. Or like I said to Donna, if we ever go to an event, if you want, we can do an interview to the two of us. It won't be stupid, and we'll go back and forth, etc. Spoiler, I would mop the fucking floor with this guy in verbal back and forth, live, with no time for him to prepare. But don't worry about that. We can make it fun, though. I'll be smiling the whole time. Obviously, like a prick, but don't worry about that.
I would love to see the two of you at an event. That would make my day. I hope I could be there for when that happens. That would be pretty fun. Shout out to Jail, because he actually does watch this channel. He waits to hear what Thorin has to say about him, and then he puts a little comment in the comments.
There you go.
Yeah, that's good. Focusing back into Cologne, let's talk about a Cinderella story, because I am on the fence about this Portuguese team. I don't know how I feel. We obviously seesaw all the way through to the playoffs. It's fantastic. It's fun. It's beautiful. Everyone loves the underdog. They did an incredible run. I thought they were going to get knocked out first game on the big stage.
Of course.
That didn't happen. Is this the real deal, though? Because, I mean, that is the question. Or is this going to be that team that we've forgotten about by the end of the year, Richard?
Well, look, I'll just say it plain. It's great. It's, you know, having a run like this at Cologne. It is a Cinderella story, but like the thing with stories is they end. And this was like, it's great for the guys on the team that they'll always be able to say, you know, we were within touching distance. And I will say as well, that there's been players that very much weren't on my radar that have certainly impressed me, like you Jerks. I thought like had a fantastic tournament. Not somebody I would have immediately looked to, given some of the names on the team. But this was just a classic example of in the scene that's in flux. It is a team that was essentially, punching above their weight, capitalizing on the chaos in these other rosters and, some of the rosters underperforming and, being able to get a few decent results. I've unfortunately seen nothing from sort of believe that this is going to be sustained or they're going to be the new kids on the blocks, ones to watch in other tournaments or whatnot. I mean, they've got a chance to prove me wrong. They're going straight into when do they next play, actually?
I think they might be at that Elisa tournament. I'm not sure.
Yeah, is it?
I don't think they're in Pro League though, right?
Yeah,
I don't believe they're in Pro League team.
So it's like, this is the other problem with it as well. It's like, where are they going to be? I mean, like, what are they going to do next? Are we not going to see them again until like the major or, like you said, the Elisa tournament? It's not
confirmed, but I don't know. I heard maybe they'd be there.
Yeah. So I mean, the issue we've got is like part of sustaining being good is you get your reps in. And you're competing regularly at tournaments, and they haven't had those opportunities. Maybe they'll get more opportunities in 2025. I do think this was a one-off. I mean, I'll say this. Berry. I know him obviously from back in the 1.6 days. He's a guy that hasn't got a lot of credit as a coach. Obviously, he's been there a while working on this project. You are working with the bare bones in the Portuguese scene. Like, they used to have a great scene in Counter-Strike Source, and I've talked about this before with the XL parties and all of that stuff. Used to go to those myself back in the day when I was a journalist. But unfortunately, you really, there's not a lot of talent there to mine to put a team together. Saw have been able to do that, but it's just, there's just not enough there, unfortunately, and this is going to probably go down is like the peak of like Mutteris's career and stuff like that. He'll probably, this is probably the high watermark for all of them. I hope they enjoy it. I think it's a great story. Yeah. It's not to be mean or disparaging. They've got no right to get to the semifinals of Cologne or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's not an achievement I think I'll see replicated by this.
By the way, that is insane as well for a nobody team that doesn't even have like some like generational talent to make semi-finals of a prestige event. And it's not like it's the beginning of the game. Like, it's basically CSGO continued. Like, it's actually super rock hard. Like, look at all the other teams that were in those semi-finals and the playoffs. Like, these are the best teams in the world, highest ranked. And I do think if you look, you did beat two of the best teams. You beat G2 and you beat fucking FaZe. Like, that's no joke. By the way, FaZe was looking like they were going to be like a dark horse to take the whole thing themselves. They were sort of reviving the talent. So I can confirm.
When Carrigan did that interview and said, I'm micromanaging everyone again.
Yeah, that was hype as fuck.
Yeah, I was like, all right, fucking hell, let's go. FaZe
like
win. FaZe
that's the line in the documentary that you say, and then obviously they go on and win it all, like you're saying, enriching that course. So I can confirm that this is not the real thing. And yes, this is fantasy.
Yes,
so
indeed.
That's the problem. The problem is this as well, right? If you ever looked, even when they made that run, even when they were coming out the group, and even after that, they never actually even had crazy stats. Like, the other thing is, if they were going to, like, at least Mongols, when they, like, killed everyone in Spirit Terror, some of their stats were way up there, and you were like, wow, okay, is that what's possible? Like, essentially, Saw just got through some games where, like, I think the other teams also inexplicably just kind of hinted into them and kind of fucked the game up. Like, the FaZe one was the weirdest one of all, because what's weird is, it ruined all the narratives we always set up about stage experience, because the most tenured team ever in the big matches is FaZe. Saw's never even sniffed a stage. Like, when people said Mateus, he was playing a 1.6, yeah, not on the fucking stage, mate. He was playing the group stage and going home after the tournament area. Like, he never had this. He's inexperienced. But inexplicably, it was FaZe that looked like they were pissing their pants. And actually, on the first map, Saw came up just blasted. Like they had no fear at all. So I can give them props in that sense. On Twitter, I was rizzing them because you have to realise, I feel like some old naval captain. I've always been at war with the Portuguese. I remember the Fox Wars. I was there at 1.6 and early CSGO. I remember the FaZe clan type. So anyway, point is, yeah, obviously I've had my wars with them, and don't worry, my Twitter basically at this point in time, if you did one of those like heat maps of all the words ever said to me on Twitter, like Corral Ho would be one of the third largest, as well as like Old Man and Irrelevant, That could be Old Man Irrelevant Corralho. That could even be my wrestling name. So yeah, I've always been at war with them. So I was obviously giving them it. And I was even doing that thing again where I never lie. I just say the truth really hurtfully, which, you know, you can decide whether that's or not. I like to stand behind it. So all I'm going to say is, when I said that line, like the 1v4 was Mutiris's career, well, it was accurate. Like, Richard said, it's the best they're ever going to do. But I was just saying it in a mean way, wasn't I? To sort of put him down. So.
I mean, look, I'll put it this way, right? They're currently ranked 10th in the world. I think Mongols are a better team than Saw. I think they have more upside. I would also be tempted to say Eternal Fire are a better team than Saw, and I think they have more upside. Now, you know, there's a couple of other teams that I think on their day would they beat Saw. Never Falcons, never Falcons. They're shit. But you know, there's like, you know, Heroic's got to be good.
Oh, sure, they're probably going to come up.
Yeah, you know, and like, you know, like there's a world where like that's a 50-50 game. Complexity and Saw, that's 50-50.
I think Complexity's better.
Yeah, so
the right opponents. Yeah,
you know, this. I mean, Saw could definitely beat them in a best of 3. Like, I 50% of the time probably. But you know, the reality is, are they good enough to achieve other finishes like this of this caliber? I mean, this is Cologne. This is one of the most prestigious events we've got on the calendar. Like, you have to believe they'll never do this again.
No.
So,
the thing is, you are right, though. The key difference is the Saw that used to make it into the major and they do fuck all there didn't have Berry. Like, that's an actual guy who's worked as a tactician for years and years and is from the Danish scene, the most notorious scene for making structure, so you can elevate lesser pieces. Like, that's a good aspect. Maybe that can give them a little bit more dark horse value. They can do the odd upset, or maybe more upset merchant, you could say. Maybe they can cause an upset over a bigger team and then lose. That's still something.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, obviously Berry was at Sprout for a lot of his career. And, you know, again, one of those guys. It's weird how it works with coaches. I always fucking hate this because, like, some coaches just get credit for nothing, like X-Taz. Like, you just been, like, you basically are just like Yoda, you know, and Ziwu is Luke, isn't he? And he just fucking carries you to trophies. Meanwhile, you haven't done a lot, but he gets nominated for Coach of the Year every year and everything because Vitality are always going to be competitively relevant for as long as they have one of the best players in the world. You know, meanwhile, a guy like Taz, I feel like every time I watch any podcast you're on,
oh, you get banged on 24/7.
It's just like
every time.
Maui Snake just popping up like fucking Toasty on the Mortal Kombat thing, just to remind you why Taz is shit at his job. It's like, for fuck's sake, like, give him a chance, man. He's only been there a few months, and it's like, you know, there's this. It's just this weird imbalance with like how we assess whether coaches or not do a good job. Like, I believe now the failure of Falcons, I think you can call Zonic a fraud. I think you can call him a fraud. Okay. There you go. There's some fucking hot take point made for you.
That's the title.
Like literally, I think
Sonic's a fraud.
Sonic is a fraud. Yeah, like literally, like what have you done to show me you are the real deal? Yeah, you won all them majors, but you did it with this particular lineup that just dominated for ages. He's obviously a good coach. You know, fraud is overselling it for the sake of clickbait. But what he's done at Falcons is fucking fraudulent because it ain't even cheap. And he supposedly got the players he wanted. So what's going on there? So it's like, meanwhile, Sprout, Berry was there for years. Berry was there as a coach, I want to say, for at least 2 years. And if you think about how competitively relevant Sprout were relative to what they were spending and the players that they unearthed, that they would then go on to sell to other organizations, like, Berry's a legit coach and definitely deserves some respect. So, look, I could almost want Saw to succeed on that basis. I mean, and maybe they will. Maybe that's the angle. Maybe Berry is the missing piece, and he's going to give them all of the, you know, incredible, you know, development potential. But it probably just isn't going to be that. I think sometimes you just have to appreciate a Cinderella run is a Cinderella run. It's a one-off. Just enjoy it. Just be happy with what you achieved. It's like, yeah, you fell at the last hurdle, but man, you had no right to even be in the race, you know. So credit to them. But the community always gets carried away. Every Cinderella run has to be the start of a fucking, you know, incredible, like, you know, upsurge in ability and development. It's like sometimes it's just a moment. It's just something to enjoy.
I think that's right. It was to enjoy it. Like it was fun to watch. I don't think that we'll see them again, but it was fun to watch.
Games. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And like the upsets, you need those every so often just to like keep everything fresh. I have a stack of other teams that I wanted to touch on, but we obviously keep it tight here from a time point of view. So I think what I want to focus on is moving away from Vitality, because we'll talk about them at the end. When you take a look at G2, the new Liquid lineup, Astralis, FaZe, MOUZ on the big stage, this is pretty much the start of us leading into the end of the year, the final major for 2024. I mean, teams that stood out for you, things that stood out for you, like Richard said, we're in a little bit of a flux, Thorin. Things are kind of up in the air, but did you see anything that made you go, we should probably watch that one for the next few months?
I mean, I do think, despite how badly it went in the Saw game, I do think FaZe did look revivified. Like, that's why I agree that Carrigan line was fire. And when he released the comms, you could hear him making the calls, like, because they just looked way better, especially on their T side. Like, they actually looked, again, like very tight and cohesive. People, obviously, Rops came alive again. That actually, if anything, their team floundering was almost a mystery. No one really had a thing of like, are they totally washed? Should they kicked everyone? That was more just why. It just makes sense. They've been able to overcome every hurdle. They could always match up against every team. You could always go everywhere in the veto. So I think that to me implied there's still some life left in FaZe, and they can still be, at this point, probably a dark horse, but they can be in the mix and they can get into a playoff and give someone a tough time and beat a contender and maybe flat to deceive, but maybe make a final, maybe make a semi-final. So that one's still cool because you know how iconic some of those players are. They're some of the best players in the world still. The G2 one, I think, is really interesting because I was a big skeptic of G2, but the one thing you cannot ignore, it's impossible over this many maps, guys, to fluke it, is they've played something like 30 plus maps with this lineup now. That firepower is real, and it is going to be there in a lot of those games. It wasn't bizarrely in that quarterfinal, but if you go and you put that team against a lot of other squads, maybe tactically they might not match up, maybe, I don't know, sometimes on T side they're a bit dodgy, but when you have that level of firepower, because here's the thing, people thought MOUZ could be good. No one thought he would actually just be like winning duels against the best players in the world. And then even Hunter had a globe, so that looks very exciting in that sense, that you're actually going to have like a team that, at least in terms of puncher's chance, I agree with Richard, that's why they could win an event, because they just have the ultimate puncher's chance. They can just turn up on the map and 4 of their players can play as good as your 2 best players. That's hard to beat in any version of Counter-Strike. It's why people, unfortunately, are drawn to the allure of the super team, because it's always your dream that if you just had those aimers, you don't need the best tactic, you don't need the best call, you don't need everyone in their perfect position, you just shoot them in the head. It's the most basic CS you can get.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I am going to advise everyone to keep an eye on is Team Liquid fans. They just never waste any time, do they? They
always just commit immediately. The second someone shows them a little bit of affection, please, milady, may I marry you forever?
I was going to go with a far more crude analogy. I was going to say, as soon as their team starts performing well, they're all round in the fucking circle and they're just cranking it. They can't fucking help themselves. Right?
I went a bit too romantic, I know.
You were there.
You kept it base. Okay.
Fedora was out, because fuck these people, they're idiots. It's like, let's be real, right? Like, they got 7 to 8 at Cologne, and there was like a Reddit thread, and it said something like, I don't care if Liquid lose to FaZe right now. I'm just so excited about this lineup, and I just can't believe what I'm seeing. I just love this team. This is the future. And it's like, fucking hell.
I know.
Like, grow up, you sickening fucking loser. It is the reality, right? Who did they fucking beat at Cologne?
No one.
They beat Furia and Complexity.
It was terrible.
Like, listen, I'll say Ultimate definitely looks to be like a good pickup in retrospect if he can sustain this form. Obviously, they've got themselves a very talented AWPer, but they got found out by a very mortal FaZe, not once but twice, and then beat, sorry, Jason Lake, they beat bums in the other 2 games. He's fucking gonna hit that. They beat teams they should beat, is what I'm trying to say. Like, Furia obviously are a joke, and but
this way, if you're a TL fan, think of what we just said about Saw. Saw beat 2 of the best teams in the world.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, you didn't even beat anyone yet. So okay.
And there wasn't a Reddit thread from like a Saw fan. I
know.
Love this team, and I don't care if we lose to FaZe. I'm just so happy. I'm floating. It's like, fuck off. So I mean, listen, this Liquid team ain't showed me shit. Like 7th to 8th at Cologne, losing to FaZe twice, beating, teams they should beat in the other 2 games. I wanted to succeed. I want Twists to prove everyone wrong, and I can do it all. I can be an IGL. I was paying attention, learning from Carrigan. Then again, every time I think I want it to do well, I think about how insufferable JKS fans are, and I think about the cosmic injustice of your Kindar getting all these chances to just
is
be
insane,
bad at
isn't
the
it?
game like that, which no other player.
He's check stealing like a motherfucking
oh,
it's crazy,
unreal.
isn't it?
It's unreal, mate. Like, I swear to God, there's he is getting right up there in the league tables of check stealers. Obviously, Hooksy, the king,
and Fallen, they'll always dominate. Come on.
I mean, you're right. I'll put.
Dude, Fallen's going on half a decade now. He's still fucking, He's like, you know what, guys, feeling motivated. I think this is my year. Crap. 30K a month. Yeah, cheers. Right, yeah, brilliant. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like this. So that's one thing I definitely picked up on. All this liquid love is a bit premature, guys. Let's wait and see, because they didn't really show me anything here in Cologne.
Did MOUZ show you enough on a big stage? I mean, I know they lost, but they did get a victory. And I don't know if you guys saw on their social media, like how they prepped for this, where they built like an entire studio at the MOUZ headquarters with lights and everything to try and make sure that they coped on the stage.
Super cringe.
That is insane.
I'm just saying, like, you do what you have to do. I mean, but it reminds me of, which manager was it? Was it Arteta? It was, wasn't it? When he set up the fake Liverpool speakers for Arsenal.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, it was. It was. And
do you know the flaw with that? It's an obvious angle that they missed there, right? That's actually called cargo cult behavior, where what you thought is like, right, well, basically, if I build a runway and a tower, and then I wait there with the hats on, then a plane will land. It's like, no, you have to have the plane first. You've missed the whole point, right? The weirdest part about that, you're building a stadium, is it's not actually the stage that makes you scared. That's a metaphor. It's the crowd. Wait, you've got 16,000 people in that stadium. So what are you training for at that point in time? Like, that's nothing. So I do think that is insanely overblown, especially because, by the way, I can tell you, if you ask the people inside that team, half that it's schizophrenic. Half that team thinks they joke, and half them think they don't. Half them think it's just a bad game on stage. Half them like, I guess we don't have a problem, So I think I agree. I think that's outrageous. Like, here's the thing: to beat G2 was all right, but semis was like the minimum for me. And I actually think if you watch that NAVI game, NAVI was there for the taking. And if they'd had a little bit more fucking stones, a bit more grit, I think they could have won that game. So my problem is, I've said this on shows, I actually know Xerxia a little bit, and I sent him a message before that playoff run and told him, fuck all this like storybook narrative people are framing, where it's like, cause you're like still young in your careers, you're allowed to step one by one up the ladder. It's okay to lose quarters because it's Cologne, but don't worry, in the next year you'll be in the final. I said, if you're actually good now, and your team has beaten everyone, by the way, you just win. Just win the tournament, mate. The winning is now. You're not supposed to wait 2 years. If you're actually good enough, that story's fugazi. So I do think, unfortunately, whether they can believe it or not, something is getting to these guys. Like, they do have the talent, if you look, to beat any team in Counter-Strike. Except FaZe, the joke was, and FaZe got worse. So that's the only one that ever beat them and counted them. So at this point in time, if you've beaten everyone, you've beaten Vitality, you've beaten G2, you've beaten Spirit, you beat Spirit multiple times, but you've beaten every single team out there. It's time to just do it when the biggest light is on you. And that obviously is much easier said than done. I can say it from the safety of this seat. But that is what all the best teams do. And as you say, Richard, they were ranked number one in the world. This isn't the online era. You were ranked number one in the world. How are we not supposed to say you're supposed to win the tournament?
I said this months ago. It's like it's just a exact carbon copy of what happened with the Danes when they first came through.
Oh, it is. It's like Astralis and TSM. Absolutely. Yes. You could beat anyone as long as it wasn't in the big major or something.
They've got the talent. They're great to watch. Lights out. Great. They've got a great IGL. It's all there. All the pieces. Start. Real firepower. I mean, like, by the way, fuck the narrative not calling these people stars. Like Jimmy and Xerxia are fucking star players, in my opinion. Like, they are fucking big.
Bro, they're going to
players.
have 3 or 4 players in the top 20 at the end of the year. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, it's like you say, you just win. There's no excuse. You had it back when you were in NXT. That was when you got to develop and feel it out and all of this stuff. And now you are going to tournaments and you are crashing out in eminently winnable semi-finals because there's something in your brain that won't let you get over the hump. And you got to recognize it. There's so many world-class sports psychologists now It's like there's no excuse if they haven't already explored it, and I haven't seen any media saying that they have or suggest they have. I haven't read an interview where they've said that they're going to do it. There are award-winning sports psychologists in esports right now that have to surely be able, to give you some tools to not feel the pressure in these games. Because the NAVI one, it was almost criminal.
Yeah.
It was almost criminal. The Inferno was criminal.
It looked like they were going to win that and go to the third map, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean, they had all the momentum rolling, and then it just so close on Mirage as well. It's like it's just crazy to me. So I don't understand what it's going to take for them to wake up, because they have to get their head around the fact that fast forward a year, your lineup's probably not together.
Yeah.
Shuhei's in FaZe.
You might have been picked apart, exactly.
Yeah.
This is your window. This is your window now.
So if you got to win something, and you can't just cruise on pro leagues.
Yes.
Sorry, guys.
There was, during the group stages, one of their players did an interview, and he mentioned he had been speaking to a sports psychologist for assistance.
Okay,
but I don't know if that's, I feel like the whole team probably needs someone to sit down with them and work through it. Instead of building a booth with flashing lights at headquarters, like maybe getting something else there.
I mean, it would look like genius if they win the tournament.
Yeah, of course.
Obviously.
Then it'd be in the documentary and everything. Yeah.
But they didn't win.
Cringe.
So Vitality won. And this is a lineup that maybe hasn't really... It always feels a bit weird saying this, because they're always there. They're always in the finals or near the finals. They've got the best... Well, some people would say the best player in the world on their lineup, but they haven't really delivered much this year. Now they've lifted Cologne. Do we see this as the resurgence of Vitality? Because there is a feeling inside me that maybe this is the start of the end of Vitality. I mean, how long does I don't know why. It's a weird feeling. There is no factual basis for this. I just wonder. It was just this weird moment when they lifted the trophy where I was like, I wonder if this lineup changes soon. Like, I wonder if this is kind of it. They've now done Cologne. I don't know where it came from. It was just like a random mumbling, so I threw it out there. But do you think that that's the rise of Vitality now? Have we seen enough, Thorin? Do you think that
they're the truth, personally. I think they're really good. Like, it's one of the reasons why I hyper-focus on ZywOo, because here's the difference. If you ever actually go back to 2019, when he first came in the scene, I always used to say the one area fans were wrong is they used to look at the rating and see he had 4 players that would have like the 1.0 rating, and they'd go, he's got no help. And I would go, mate, he doesn't have fragging firepower help, but he has the best players France ever produced. If I'm a rookie, of course I want like NBK and RPK and Apex in my team. Like, you've just filled out all the roles, for fuck's sake. So if they're doing a 1.0, they did their job, and then they let my superstar on the platform go crazy and kill everyone. Hence why Alex did the infamous stupid interview where he said we just flash for him and that's why he gets all the kills, which is obviously an absurd statement at this point in time. But the difference is, then you went to that lineup with Masuta and Kyorjin. That was a fucking travesty. It wouldn't have mattered if he was simple. You wouldn't have won the events with that lineup. So I have felt for ZywOo many years when I felt like he did sometimes either have to be all the firepower, or for those ones, they were actually literally, because Kyorjin was like starting 4v5 every time. That's impossible. But with this lineup this year, one of my takes on every show has been, actually, ZywOo, you could have won every single tournament you were in a semi or a final here. If you were just the best player in the server, like everyone tells me you are, you win all these events. Because when I look at your squad, bro, do you know how many other teams would be desperate to take your players if you kick him? You kick Spinks tomorrow, boom, he's in Falcons or something like that. He's probably going to be like one of the top 20 players in the year. They'd start getting better. If you kick Flames, probably FaZe Clan or something takes him tomorrow instead of Rain. They're back on top again. By the way, little Mezzi that no one gave a fuck about, the guy who, by the way, got all those entries on Mirage, just rounded out the team. He ended, I think, ±0 for the whole 4 maps. He plays the worst fucking roles. That means he did his job. Like, this team's actually, I think the roster is very good. They might not be as cohesive as you'd want. You saw in this Navi game, they could just fuck up 2vx's at the end of the game. But I'll tell you what, the firepower they have now is nuts. Like, it isn't just ZywOo. Sometimes you just run in onto a site and Spinks and Flames have killed everyone and you just got the site for free. Sometimes without any utility. So I think if you look at this roster, I think this roster can win the Shanghai Major. They'd be one of my top 2 teams. I think it's I don't know if I can still go with Spirit now. I'll probably have to put Navi there for the moment in light of what they've done and give them that respect. But this would still be one of the absolute favourites to win the Major for me. And ZywOo is still really good. Maybe he took a while to warm up in that final. But the point is, when he warms up, no one can stop him. That's why once he got going on Mirage, you had to know if they won that map, it was over. You had to know that at that point, you've let the beast awaken now, mate. You had your chance. You had your 2.5 maps. You didn't get them, though. So I think Vitality is a very good roster. And again, it's classic saying in punditry, but embarrassment of riches, the players they've got. You know how many teams would kill for this lineup?
I mean, for me, I think it's actually freakishly unlucky we're not in a Vitality era right now.
Yeah, they should be the one that won everything.
We're not talking about that. I mean, like, at the major, it kind of felt like once we got to the semifinals, like anything could have happened.
Yeah.
I genuinely believed we were on rails for G2. Navi, well, really G2, that veto messed them up. But it was a masterclass from CadiaN in the Vitality game.
Yep.
Before then bottling it in the final in a stadium he's bottled it in before.
By the way, if Vitality made that final, they win that major, Richard. Come on.
Yeah. No, I concur, and I'll say as well the real freakish one is the 3-0 final loss in the Pro League against MOUZ, right? Where they didn't get double-digit rounds on a single map. I don't know what happened there. I mean, you know, you have to point the finger at your IGL, but the pressure MOUZ was under coming out of that.
Oh, for sure.
Then they go to Dallas. Okay, well, you definitely win that one. But no, the G Stu factor kicks
miracle.
in. You know, they've got. I mean, literally a miracle run and also a miracle crowd, which no one talks about. It's NA fans.
True.
They were on some Astralis bullshit there. But I mean, like, you know, there was 2 overtimes in that best of 3. And so Vitality could have conceivably won that. Then you have the spring finals, and they got Shero'd. Shero had like one of the performances of the year to knock them out in the semi-finals again.
These are all the best performances of all these teams, if you notice this year. Everyone's having the game of their life.
Next to Cologne, they probably, conceivably, could have had a major, should have had a Pro League, in my opinion, should have had a Dallas, in my opinion. So they would be inarguably the number 1 team right now. What I did notice, what I will say, the difference maker for me in Cologne was Apex, actually. Like, sure, ZWoo didn't go missing in big games, but I mean, like, put it this way, the Inferno map was fucking ridiculous. There was a round where they won one round with a clutch, wonderful, I think, like, messed it up, and they got like 1v2 to win. Then Spinks burst out of apartments, got a 3K with a ridiculous double spray transfer, one of the maddest things I've ever seen. And then in the next round, Apex ran at Banana like he used to do back in the day and just killed 3 people in 2 seconds. And it was like, oh, okay, well, that's that. They're definitely winning this map. And credit to NAVI for pulling it back and making it 13-9. But Apex called a masterclass in the final, but his individual level of performance was insane. And his entry fragging was actually insane on Inferno. He had such a monstrous performance. So, you know, with Mezzi raising his level and Apex having, I mean, he said it himself, I think in the previous round, he said he had a life game. Well, no, the life game actually did come in the final. If they can maintain even a fraction of that, like, Vitality are definitely in with a shout at the next major. They'll be there or thereabouts.
That Apex comment, though, Blade mentioned at the end of it when they'd lost, he did an interview where he said, I think they needed it more than we did this time. But when he said that, it kind of reminded me, this is a bit fluffy, but when I was watching that game, there was at one point, just watching Apex in the server playing, I was like, this guy is going to win this on his own if he has to. Like, there was just a hunger to the way he was playing that I was like, that whole saying of someone wants it more, I was like, he is not leaving without the trophy. That was kind of the feeling I got when we were watching him play and watching that whole team come together. So as much as I say there's a part of me that worries that I feel like pieces might get picked out, I think it could be really exciting going into the rest of the year if they can continue this form. So the question is, do you think that they continue the form? I know Thorin said that he thinks they can. Richard?
I'm all in.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, Dan's under no illusions. I've known him a long fucking time. You know, we go back, and he's 31 now, right? He's 31. He's had to transition into being an IGL to extend his career. He was at one point an unplayable entry fragger star player, and he's gone through quite an evolution. But he's also the one on the chopping block, isn't he? I mean, sure, maybe Mezzi, maybe, but then again, you know, he is playing the anchor role, he is playing the undesirable roles, all the shit spots that no one else wants. So, if they hadn't won Paris, Dan was gone. He would have been cut if they didn't win in Paris, which is why he had that very emotional response to it. So, ultimately, he's under no illusions, and I think they set themselves a very high standard in Vitality. I think they've got in terms of just individual talent, role for role. You've got to say they're one of the most talented rosters in the world. This is before we even talk about ZywOo. I mean, Flames has leveled up his game immensely. He's one of the most clutch players in World Counter-Strike right now. And I don't think people realized how good he was going to get to. Spinks had a rocky start when he first joined. He's just fantastic now. And so with all these parts, they've got at least 3 players that are going to be in that top 15, but very high up.
And one might be number 1.
Yeah, and one could conceivably be the number 1 in the world.
Yeah.
So they have to set themselves the standard of winning tournaments. And as I said, you could see them picking up the next major for me. It wouldn't be beyond the realm of possibility at all.
And on that note, thank you so much, gents. This for me was pretty damn awesome. Almost as exciting as being able to work at Cologne. I feel like I've ticked a bucket list getting to do this with both of you.
Great to see you out there, actually. And like I say, don't rule it out. Me and Duncan obviously have painted ourselves into a corner.
Sure.
In terms of who we will and won't work with.
Something of a Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid situation at this point,
It is. But there are, I'm doing more event work this year, and I'm going to be on the.
If someone wants to hire all 3 of us, we'll work the event. Just hit us up.
Yeah, exactly. So
hit us up, petition for it in the comments, and we'll see you in the next episode.